Welcome in, Oklahoma Sooners fans, college football fans, to another episode of Oklahoma Sooners Live. Very excited to get into it tonight. There's a lot to discuss, even though we're in the off season. I feel like there's quite a bit to discuss. Not all of it really pertains to the Oklahoma Sooners. There's some extra curriculars that have been going on at the ACC and Big Ten media days that I would love to dive into and give my 2 cents. Some things that might not really affect the Sooners too much, but it does kind of talk about the Sooners' new conference and kind of throwing a little bit of shade there. We're also going to talk about the new athletic director search committee and so much more. Kind of diving into fall ball a little bit and getting into specifically about fall ball. There's not really a whole lot. They just started this week, but we're going to dive into it a little bit and talking about specifically the offense, because I think that's what Oklahoma fans are excited about. Oklahoma fans are ready to see what this offense is all about. What are we going to get with this offense? And I want to talk about that here later on tonight. Make sure to jump in that live chat, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. If you're not already subscribed, please hit that subscribe button. We've already gotten over the 6,000 mark, but let's keep on growing from there. Also, for those of you who are our regular listeners, our regular audience, first of all, thank you so much. You don't have to do anything more than what you do just by joining in here live, watching us. Even if you catch it after the live shows, I know busy schedules, you can't always catch it live. But just stay tuned to the channel. We've got plenty of things. We're trying to crank out more content and really build this up, and we're trying to build a community. So if you want to, then what we're doing is we're setting up a membership program for those of you who have been, those of you who have been in the comments almost every single live show that we've got in the regular channel episodes that we release. All of that we want to give back to you guys. And so you can join that membership program. It starts as low as, I believe, $2.99 a month. And all that does is just shows your appreciation for this channel, that you want us to keep on growing. So that link is down in the description below if you'd like to. And what we'll try to do is we're going to try to promote more on this channel specifically for our members. There's going to be more exclusive stuff for members. You're going to have exclusive access to certain things. We're also going to do things we've talked about, possibly starting up some online gameplay that will be available to only members, where we can play EA Sports College Football 26. There's going to be a lot of fun stuff. So that's just a few things that we've got in mind. If you've got suggestions of what you would like in the membership, please throw that in the chat, throw that in the comments. We'd love to hear from you guys and really kind of build that up. Again, what that's doing, obviously, I know that there's tons of other places you guys could go to listen to other media people talking about Oklahoma and college football, but you come here, and so we want to give back to you guys. And what that's doing when you join the membership is kind of helping us keep on growing, because it does take quite a bit to put this on. And so huge thank you to all of you who have. But if you don't want to join the membership program, again, that link is in the description. But if you don't want to, just hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, follow us on social media. Again, all those links are down below. But let's go ahead and get into it, because I know what you guys came here for. You guys came here because you like to talk about Oklahoma football. And, that's why we started this entire channel. That's why I host this show, because we're here to talk some college football. And we're going to start off with some things that have been going on in the ACC and Big Ten media days. And I'm going to start off with the ACC, because I think this one is a little bit more interesting. But over at the ACC media days, we've got an SMU coach, and his name is Rhett Lashley. He kind of took a shot at the SEC. And I thought it was just kind of ironic. I had to respond to this, and I'm sure my response isn't going to go back to Rhett or anything like that. But it is just kind of a silly comment that he made in the ACC media days. And I think there's been kind of this collaborative attack against the SEC, both in the Big Ten and the ACC. I even heard some of it in the Big 12, where they're trying to attack the SEC. Now, the SEC has always boasted that they're the best conference, and I think there's a very good reasoning for that. When Oklahoma was in the Big 12, I always tried to combat and be like, well, what about this? And there really wasn't a good argument. I would always basically concede and say, you can't discount any other conference, but that's not what people are doing when they're saying that the SEC is the greatest conference. Yes, the Big Ten has won a national championship with Ohio State and Michigan in most recent years. Yes, the Big Ten gets in the mix every once in a while. Yes, Clemson from the ACC. I don't think you can really throw hardly anyone else in that mix, but Clemson has been a thorn in really all of college football side, and in the SEC's side when it comes to the college football playoffs. But the ACC I think that the argument that the ACC is just as good as the SEC is absolutely ridiculous. We can have this discussion with the Big Ten, right? Because we recognize that Ohio State and Michigan, even Penn State, throw them in the mix. Those are some good teams. After that, who do you have? You're extremely top heavy. Now in the SEC, you've got several teams. So the comment that was made from Rhett Lashley, the SMU head coach, he was talking about the strength of the ACC and trying to build it up to be what it's really not. And I'll get more into that. But he says the SEC has the same 6 schools winning the championship since 1964. Not a single one has been different since 1964. And then he continued with, that's top heavy to me. That's not depth. Okay, back up. First of all, if you're saying that there's 6 teams in the SEC that they're the ones that are championship caliber, let's go over to the ACC and give me 6 teams that are championship caliber. Give me 6 teams from the ACC then that since 1964 that they've won a national championship. Now, first off, I would like to stop and just mention, I do think when you're talking about this, I think you have to mention Oklahoma and Texas in this group because they're in the SEC now. And the reason why you group them in now is because they've both added to that overall national championship list. Now, you don't credit the national championships to the conference, but you do have to recognize that that's 2 more teams that are championship caliber teams. Those are 2 more teams that are going to keep on throwing their hat in the mix for being at the top of the league. And, you might have your reservations about throwing Oklahoma in there, sure, but still, that's 8 different teams. So first off, you're wrong because from the premise that you're using, there's 8 teams in the SEC. Now, you that would be as if the SEC were to claim Georgia Tech's national championship, even though that was after they left the SEC for the ACC. I don't know. I think of the ACC, and I'm just wondering what do you have to back that up? As if the ACC is just as good as the Big Ten, the ACC is just as good as the SEC because you guys only have 6 teams. And in reality, 8 teams that are national championship contenders. Okay, well let's say that's true. So I'm going to go back to just the BCS era. Okay, I just want to go back to the BCS era from the start of the BCS, which is 1998. Okay, so from then on, I think that's the most relevant. You can say 2000. You can go a little bit further back, and I suppose 1964 is kind of considered like the modern era. I think you're starting to go too far back. It's 2025, guys. We're heading into 2026 in a few months. By the end of this football season, we'll be into 2026. So I'm just going to go back to just the BCS era because I think the argument still stands true, and it's just as valid, I think. So at the beginning of the BCS era, 1998. You've got Florida State, Miami, and Clemson that have all won a national championship, at least one. I know that there's several in there, but there's 3 teams who have won a national championship since 1998, the beginning of the BCS era. You go over to the Big Ten. You've also got 3 if you're including USC, because, again, to my argument, you include that team just because, again, they're in that caliber of teams that have won since then. Therefore, they have some relevancy in the sport when it comes to making it to the national stage. Now, you could go a little further back with the Big Ten and throw in teams. I think like Nebraska would have been in 97, if memory serves me correctly. I think also in 95. So, I mean, honestly, Nebraska, and I actually believe in Nebraska. I shouldn't. I think I'm close. I was actually just talking to somebody about this. I commented back at somebody because I'm close. My family's Nebraska fans. My brother and my dad. I talk to them all the time about Nebraska football. And I cheer them on. I went to the Nebraska-Colorado game with them last year. Have all kinds of fun cheering for the Huskers, and I want them to get back to prominence. But anyways, I digress. Since 1998, we're not going to include the Huskers. You've got 3 in the Big Ten, 3 in the ACC. How many does the SEC have? Well, let's see. We know for sure Bama, Georgia, LSU, they've all won recently. You go a little bit further back, you've got Florida, who has also won. Let's see. Oklahoma fans don't want to talk about that one in there. But that was back in 08. They also don't want to talk about that USC that I just mentioned. But anyways, you've got Bama, Georgia, LSU, Florida. You've got Auburn, Tennessee, Oklahoma, and Texas. So you've got 8 teams. All right, now let's jump over real quick and take a look. So you've got, correct me if I'm wrong, is there 12 teams in the ACC? I know there's, I believe 16 in the Big Ten. I'm forgetting how many there are in all of these conferences now because you keep on expanding and retracting, expanding, retracting. But I know for sure at Big Ten you've got 16, so you've got 3 teams, and I would throw Penn State in that mix. And then you go over to the ACC. Honestly, those 3 are the only ones I can think of that I would really throw in that mix of being championship contention teams. You've got FSU, Miami, and Clemson, and Florida State is not anywhere near there right now. So, I think that's absolutely ridiculous to even throw them in right now. So this season, let's talk this season. Who's a championship contender in the ACC? And I see in the comments too, somebody put in 17. Okay, so 17 makes my point even stronger. So you've got 3 out of 17 that are championship contenders, and that's I don't even think you have 3 in the ACC this year. I think you have Miami and Clemson. Those are the only two that I think would come out of the ACC to win a national championship this season or even in the next 5 years, in my opinion. Florida State might be able to get back there. They still recruit well, and they had one terrible season, right? I think only winning 2 games last season. But okay, so let's give you 3, possibly 4 in the ACC. Okay, let's give you 3, maybe possibly 4 in the Big Ten. Really, I think there's only 3 in each of those. Now, do I think that there's 8 teams that are capable of winning like this season in the SEC? No, but I think there's still of all of those 8 teams that I mentioned. I don't really know any of those 8 teams that wouldn't be able to get themselves back. Which of these 8 teams that I'm mentioning with Bama, Georgia, LSU, Florida, Auburn, Tennessee, Oklahoma, and Texas, which of those 8 teams don't still recruit at a very high level? And I'm talking top 20 classes. You go out and you get big guys in the transfer portal. You've still got a name brand that people are, players are still drawn into. Name one of those schools. Auburn picked up Jackson Arnold in the transfer portal, and I know Oklahoma fans might disagree with me there, but that's still a former 5-star player that you got to transfer in over there. I'm pretty sure they just picked up a 5-star safety that I saw here just within the last few days. Auburn still brings in 4-star, 5-star players, and I think that's the worst of those 8 teams that I just mentioned. So again, if we're making the argument that the SEC only has 6 and really 8 teams that have won since 1964. I'm going to go to 1998, like I mentioned, just because I think that's the most relevant to bring up. Honestly, if you really want to bring up relevancy, then let's talk the last 10 years. The SEC, and I honestly still believe this, I think that the SEC has 8 teams that can compete for the SEC every season. This season, I would probably, out of that list, I'd probably take Florida and Auburn out, just because Florida has a very tough schedule, and I'm not really sure how they're going to bounce back from last season, from the last few seasons. I'm not sure. I have faith that Florida will be better this year, but they're kind of like Oklahoma in my eyes, where I'm just not sure if they're back there. Oklahoma obviously has made a lot of moves, and I know what they are, so I'm going to throw Oklahoma in that mix. So I can keep Florida in there if you want me to, but at least swapping out Auburn for South Carolina, I think would be the smartest move there. There might be another school in there that I'm leaving out, but I think if you look at the top 8 to top 10 teams in the SEC, leaving out the bottom 6, I think if you think of teams like Arkansas or Kentucky, you've got Vanderbilt's not going to be competing for an SEC championship. I suppose you throw Missouri in there, so there you go. That just kind of adds to the strength there. Again, I think that probably your top 10. So really, you got Arkansas, Mississippi State, Vanderbilt. And I'm missing one there that I'm leaving out off the top of my head. But you've got about 4 teams that I think you're probably not going to win the SEC. But outside of that, I don't know. What do you have out of the SEC that could win a national championship or even compete for the SEC championship compared to the ACC? I just think it's a ridiculous statement to make that the SEC is top heavy when you've got the top half. I think there's half of the conference that is good enough and they're close enough where they could really bang each other up enough to where they could win the conference. You've got 8 teams, 8 solid teams that I think will be competing. Which 8 of those teams you want to throw in there, I don't care. Texas A&M was one of them that I was leaving out. That's another team that, honestly, depending on what Mike Elko does down there at Texas A&M, they might be in the mix. So you look at the SEC, you've got at least 8 teams. You can swap out those 8 teams for whoever you want. let's just break it down and say 6 teams have a realistic chance to winning the SEC this season. Okay, 6 out of 16 teams. You go over to the Big Ten. I think you've only got 3 teams in the Big Ten that have a chance. I think you've got Ohio State, you've got Penn State, and it's either Michigan or swap them for maybe a USC if USC were to bounce back, or who might be another team that could really contend. I think Nebraska could this year just because they've got such an easy schedule. You've got maybe 3 teams that can compete for the Big Ten. Oregon's another team that I don't want to leave out of there. So you really only have 3, maybe 4 teams in the Big Ten. In the the ACC now. Again, like I said, there's not anyone outside of Miami or Clemson that I think is going to win the ACC this year. Georgia Tech could surprise people because they've been making some weird moves. So let's throw them in there as in a mix. But still, like I said, I think you have 6 to 8 teams in the SEC. That's not top heavy. Okay, and I think that's just ridiculous. And another mention to the kind of a cut down to the SEC was Coach Signetti. Let me start by saying this: I love Coach Signetti. So I grew up in Indiana for a lot of my life. I think 7 years of my childhood was spent in Indiana. Love Coach Signetti. Love what he's doing with the IU Hoosiers, and I love everything that he's done there. He was the perfect hire there. I hope he keeps on going in the upward trend, winning 8 to 10 games. I mean, when I lived there, they were hoping for 6 wins, and if they won 6 wins, they were throwing a Super Bowl party. That's how it was. And you know what? To bring IU into the mix of, man, we're going to make it to the college football playoffs last season. I mean, that's just an incredible season for them to have. And I do see a lot of upward trends that they're picking up some really good. I think you find some of those players that when you look into them, like they're getting D1 offers from other big time schools, kind of those diamond in the rough players, but they're also picking up 4-star guys. They're picking up Mendoza that came over from Cal, a great quarterback to fill in for Rourke that was there last season. So I like Coach Signetti. I love what he's doing there. I like his competitive nature. I like him kind of being a little cocky, if you will. I like it because you know what? He backed it up last season. And everyone wants to say that, they got whooped against Notre Dame in the playoffs. They didn't belong in the playoffs. I personally don't see it that way. I think you take out that 98-yard run by Jeremiah Love, and that's a close game. That was a very close game. And then the fact that they fought back to where there was a possibility that they get the onside kick and they go down there and they tie that game up at the end of the game. So I think people didn't watch the entirety of that game. I think they watched the first half of the game and they see that 98-yard run. You take that out, and I think that was a very competitive game. Defense was gritty. The offense was able to score at times, but they struggled. But so does Notre Dame's offense. I mean, they hung in that game much better. Anyways, off my soapbox about Coach Signetti. I just wanted to go on the record saying I love Coach Signetti. I love what he's doing at IU, and I really think he's going to keep them in the talks for at least winning 8 games a year. I really do. I think that he could be that guy. And he's getting a whole different culture brought into IU. Anyways, he kind of took a shot at the SEC and specifically the scheduling and for them scheduling easier non-conference games. And he kind of used that as an excuse for why they canceled their home series against Virginia upcoming. And I believe that would have been next season and then the season after. So the 26 and 27 season. And so he was kind of using that as an excuse for why, and he was asked about it. Now, here's what my stance is. For any coach out there, I don't care what conference you're in, what team you have, you schedule the easiest games for non-conferences. For non-conference schedules, you just schedule the easiest games possible. I don't care what conference you're in, especially if you're in the Big Ten, SEC, or ACC, or Big 12 for that matter. In any of the Power 4, for sure. If you're in a group of 5, I can understand trying to squeeze in one of those higher ranked teams to try to add to that strength of schedule if you're actually serious about you thinking you're going to be able to compete in the playoffs, I suppose. But ultimately, if you're a Power 4 school, you schedule the easiest games you can possibly get. And here's why. Because what matters more? Does it matter more that you competed really well against a team but that you lost? Like, for example, this season, Ohio State, Texas. That could be that's going to be an extra loss on one of those two teams' record that they're going to have to deal with later on when it comes to trying to get into the playoffs. One of those teams is going to have a loss on their record, and you now have to focus so much on a tough conference to go through. So, I think that's something that if I were any coach, I'd be canceling any Power Four non-conference games in the future, just because you need easy wins. You need those 3 to 4 easy wins as much as possible. But he kind of took a little jab at the SEC as if the SEC just has easy schedules. And yes, the SEC does have 4 non-conference games, and 3 of those are usually easy games. The fourth one, I mean, you think of Clemson, South Carolina, Clemson, LSU. You think of Ohio State, Texas, Oklahoma, Michigan. There's others that I could bring up that Texas A&M, Notre Dame. I believe that one's happening this season. It did last season as well. So I mean, there's others that you can bring out that they're scheduling one tougher game in there, and I feel like it's been that way for most of what I can remember. It's not always just easy games. I think that's that's just a total false rhetoric, a false narrative. So anyways, Coach Signetti said that was a scheduling philosophy that began before I was hired, but I did sign off upon it. I did sign off on it upon being hired before our first season. And then he went on to say, so we figured we'd take an SEC scheduling philosophy. Some people don't like it. I'm more focused in on those nine conference games. Again, so going back to last season, the only real tough games that Indiana really played all season was Ohio State, and they kind of got manhandled in that game. You really can't argue that one. It was closer than I think the scoreboard alludes to, and they were also dealing with some injuries. So I will give them that. But that Ohio State game is one that I think I will throw in there. That's a tough game for sure. And that Michigan game was another tougher game. That's their 2 toughest games on the schedule last season. Washington was a tough matchup, but Washington wasn't very good last year. It wasn't the same national championship team from a season ago. So what I'm saying here is that the 9 games in conference that you have in the Big Ten, you can get away with probably 7 or 8 of those, at least 6 or 7 of those being games that are just as good as Indiana, if not worse. So, I just think that, you think of your 9 conference games. I get what he's saying, okay? But to take a jab at the SEC as if the SEC doesn't have possibly 6. I mean, you look at Oklahoma's schedule, you've got probably 6 teams that are ranked on that schedule. That's what the SEC fights through. And that's why they have just 8 SEC games. Not only that, but you can also kind of schedule things around. I think it's easier for the SEC scheduling. There's a lot that goes into that. But I think just the difficulty of the SEC, and it's a narrative that everyone is really pouring in on the SEC. Like I mentioned, the Big 12, ACC, and the Big 10 have all been against the SEC, trying to get them to schedule 9 conference games. And the reason why they're doing that is because they all view the SEC and they know that the SEC is tougher. Okay, if they're actually honest about it, they don't think that. So let me take it. So ACC has no competition. ACC needs to keep out of it. Obviously, the Big 12 has no room to be talking right now. Without Oklahoma, Texas, I don't know what the Big 12 is. It's not going to be a championship contending team anywhere in the Big 12. Now, in the ACC, again, you've got Clemson, Miami. You can probably throw one more team in there every once in a while that's going to jump up there and be in the talks. You've got 3 teams. You guys can keep out of it. When you actually look at the national standings and where each team stands, it's really between the SEC and the Big Ten. Now, let me do this little test for you just to prove my point. I don't care so much about the top heaviness. Let's look at the lowest part of the league. So when you have those games that if you're at the top, if you're like the top 3 teams in the conference, what are those bottom 4 teams that you look at and you say, if I've got them on my schedule, I'm marking that off as a win no matter what? Now, every once in a while, things happen. You've got upsets that happen. I get it. But let's look over at the Big Ten real quick. I'm just going to name off the bottom 4. You got Purdue, Rutgers, Maryland, Northwestern. Okay. Honestly, I think Michigan State and UCLA are kind of being thrown in there right now because both of them are not very good. I think you could probably almost throw Nebraska in there. Almost. I do think that they're making some better moves, and they got themselves to a bowl eligibility last season. I think they're bound to win 8 games this season. You have to if you're Nebraska with that easy schedule. But anyways, I think for sure everyone would pretty much agree that Purdue, Rutgers, Northwestern, and Maryland. So Purdue, Rutgers, Maryland, Northwestern. Those are your 4 bottom feeder teams. Keep those names in mind. Go over to the SEC. I know Vanderbilt just had a big season last year, upset Alabama, all this stuff. Cool. Same with Arkansas. They were able to upset Tennessee. Cool. But anyways, right now, the bottom feeders, the guys that have no chance winning the SEC this year, basically. Now, things could change, okay? Things could change. These teams might fluctuate. You might have somebody else jump down into the bottom feeders. But anyways, you've got Vanderbilt, Mississippi State, Kentucky, and Arkansas in the bottom of the SEC. Now, you can try to throw Auburn in there, but the reason why I'm not throwing Auburn in there is because Auburn's still recruiting pretty well. Auburn is still stealing recruits from Alabama, recruits from Texas, recruits from Florida. I mean, Auburn's hanging in there. And I have faith they're going to get back. It's just whether this regime is the right regime to get them back. I don't know. Anyways, we're just taking 4 teams right now. And those are the 4 teams that I think are kind of the bottom feeders right now, personally. So Purdue, Rutgers, Maryland, Northwestern. If you had those 4 teams as the teams that you're looking at that would be on your schedule, or Vanderbilt, Mississippi State, Kentucky, Arkansas, which 4 teams would you look at and say, I would rather have those 4 teams? If you were to keep them grouped, which of those sections would you rather go for? Would you rather go for Purdue, Rutgers, Maryland, Northwestern? Or would you rather go for Vanderbilt, Mississippi State, Kentucky, Arkansas? Because let me tell you this right now, Arkansas still got some dudes over there. They have some terrible coaching right now, but they still got some dudes. They still got a stadium that's going to sell out and just be rocking. Mississippi State has a stadium that, man, once you hear them cowbells ringing, your ears are going to be bleeding. Filling up at least 60,000 fans in the stadium. You're not going to get that from Purdue or Rutgers or Maryland, Northwestern. You're not going to get that up there. Vanderbilt, again, not always a good team, but they are one of those sneaky teams that comes out there and beats somebody like Alabama, and they have no business doing it. Now they're starting to even recruit well. So watch out there. Mississippi State, I think I already mentioned that. Mississippi State, Kentucky. Anybody in the SEC will tell you, watch out going to Lexington at night. Anybody in the SEC. I'm just throwing this out there. I personally think that the bottom feeders of the Big Ten don't stand a chance. I think anyone to say that the Big Ten list of the bottom feeders, and you can swap those 4 teams for whoever you think is the worst in the Big Ten. If you disagree with me on that, that's fine. Or in the SEC, we can swap those teams around. Which bottom feeders would you truly prefer to go against? If you had to schedule them on your season, on every season from now on, and you had to pick the 4 bottom feeders of one or the other, which ones are you going to pick? Because I'm going to tell you, anybody that knows ball, anybody that has any idea of college football is going to pick the Big Ten's bottom feeders. I think that you're crazy if you think on average the SEC bottom feeders aren't better. Anyways, make sure to jump in that live chat. I will get over to the live chat here in just a minute. Actually, let's go ahead and jump to the live chat because we're switching topics. I don't want to miss what you guys have to say here. So first, he says, let's see, it's the one ID EST. So I'm gonna have to think. I know that there's a hidden message in that name, and I want to guess it, but I'm gonna have to think about that one. I'm not gonna think about it right now. But he says, I'm just gonna call you the one right now. He says SM who? And then also goes in to say they'll be back on sanctions before anyone. Not sure who you're mentioning there, but anyways, yeah, I mean, SMU, for anyone in the ACC, SMU calling out the SEC is crazy. Let's have SMU come over and play an SEC schedule real quick. Healing is free, not easy. Doc Smith's Jing Palace. All right, he says, Mateer could be the next Johnny Football if this offense comes together, and if that happens with their defense, sky is the limit. Boomer Sooner. Yeah, you know what? I don't know about Johnny Football. First off, I never liked Johnny Manziel, so I don't like that at all. But I see what you're saying, though. He could be a crazy good star player. I know that that's what you mean by that, and that's totally correct. He could be, and like I really do think that the sky's the limit. And again, based on your name there, healing is free, not easy. Hey, if we're healed, if we're all healthy and everything, everybody's healed up and ready to go throughout the entirety of the season, this offense really could be very dangerous. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun regardless. I think you look at that again. I don't think anybody's really questioning the defense, right? So this defense is something to take a look at. Jimmy Satterfield says Oklahoma trying to flip a linebacker committed to Northwestern. You know what? Northwestern does kind of get those. They're kind of like Iowa on the defensive side where they get those like big beefy offensive linemen and linebackers. Those like I don't know, dude. Like Northwestern's weird about getting some really good dudes. Like I'm talking like a fullback. Sometimes your linebackers. They're not going to get any skill position players, but there's some positions that are your meaty players. I do think that Northwestern sometimes does get some freaky good players, and it doesn't make any sense why, but they do. I've seen them pull in random 4 stars every once in a while. And it's like, why? Why are you going to Northwestern? Do you not have any pride for yourself? Excuse me as I take a quick sip. Some unsweet tea tonight. Going that route. Anyways, let's jump back down through the chat a little bit more. The one says Indiana played FIU, Western Illinois, UCLA, Charlotte, Maryland, Northwestern, first 6 games last year. Yeah, no kidding. I mean, out of all of that, Illinois is like, I would say Illinois compares to maybe like Vanderbilt, maybe Kentucky. I don't even think they're. I don't even think Illinois right now is probably like the comparison to Kentucky, where you never know if what team you're going to get. They're either a really physical team that can compete, or they're not there and they just get whooped. It's like there is no in between. But yeah, I mean, I just think again, you look at these two teams. He also says Kentucky D line with pancake Indiana. Yeah, I mean, you look at these two conferences. I just don't think that there's any. I don't think that there's any comparison. I really don't. I think that you look at the three conferences, and I'm not talking about the top. I think the top of the top. I'm talking like your top 4 teams in any conference it's very competitive. Okay, nobody's saying that the best of the SEC is better than the best of the Big Ten. Nobody's saying that the best of the SEC is better than the best of the ACC, because that's simply not true. What SEC fans are trying to prove, and it's obviously just not ever going to get through anybody's head, is just that the SEC is truly deeper than any other conference. And again, my point stands true. Look at the bottom feeders, okay? Which of those bottom feeders would you rather have to face every season if you had to put all 4 of those bottom feeder teams? And again, you can swap them out for whoever you want. I just think you'd be crazy to pick the Big Ten, or sorry, the SEC's bottom feeders over the Big Tens. Sooner Bob says, healthy is smooth, smooth is fast, fast is hard to compete with. Yeah, well said. Well said. Sounds like some Mr. Miyagi stuff right there. I like that. Anyways, I'm going to jump in because the Oklahoma Sooners have announced the next AD, the next athletic director committee. The Sooners kind of formed this new search committee to find and recommend a new athletic director to replace Joe Castiglione. And so Joe C has been the athletic director for Oklahoma since 1998. Again, dating all the way back to the beginning of the BCS era. That's how long he's been with Oklahoma. Plans to retire June 2028, which I don't know exactly what this transition period is going to look like. But, right now, Castiglione, he's going to stay at Oklahoma as the AD, and he will be there and stay on as an advisory role. He's still going to be there, probably even as an advisory role. And from what I'm hearing, to this committee even. He's going to be helping the committee with their insights, kind of focusing, even fundraising as an AD. He's going to still be doing all of his normal athletic director duties until this transition period, whatever that looks like. And so I kind of wanted to take a look at the committee itself and break down the committee and talk about how the committee will look and what it's supposed to kind of be. Because I think this committee, it struck a lot of people as kind of odd. A lot of people are wondering if this is how it's supposed to work. How is this kind of all put together? And so I kind of want to break that down, go through here, kind of talk about this committee. And so first, kind of mentioning that this committee, it's made up of 12 different members with kind of diverse backgrounds. And what this is, it kind of ensures a well-rounded perspective, something that, it's going to get an opinion on just about every part of being an athletic director as you possibly can. I will say, as a guy that covers Oklahoma baseball for OU Insider, one thing that I can say is I don't see any baseball representation in there. We need to throw Skip in there, throw somebody. I don't know who you want to throw in. Maybe you want to take Kyler Murray in there for the baseball side or something. I don't know. But I do feel like there needs to be a baseball representative in there. I'm going to throw that out there for my baseball fans, because I do think that there needs to be a baseball representative, and there just isn't. But anyways, it's the idea is to get as many diverse people with different opinions and get them all together to look and try to build up what they want in an athletic director, throw in their opinion, their 2 cents, and try to throw all of that together to where you get the best well-rounded athletic director, and then try to shape that into existence. And that's kind of what this is. And so there, again, 12 different members. It's chaired by Randall Stevenson, who's the chair of football, and also a special advisor to OU's president and athletic director. So the members are going to include, and I'll throw this up here too, and go through the names of everybody out there. So the members are, let me change this a little bit so we can kind of see this a little better. Might not be much better right there. Let's do it that way. We can see that a little bit better. Let me know if that's too small for you guys to see, but at least we can see everybody. I don't know. We might be able to see that just fine. Yeah, you can see that just fine. We'll keep it on the bigger screen like that. Anyways, this committee, it's you've got university leaders like vice presidents, executive affairs, got general counsel, student affairs, advancement, human resources. You've got everybody. You've got a faculty representative, you've got a staff representative, student representatives. You've got former OU coaches, stars, and you've even got outside designees, like Amy Noah from the OU Foundation. So I'm going to go through the list of everybody that's on this committee. And then we'll kind of get into how they're going to work together, what they're going to do, and kind of what this looks like. But first, starting off with Randall Stevenson, again, the chair of football, special advisor. Then you've got Holly Hunt, who's the vice president, executive affairs, chief of staff. Armand Paliota. I don't know some of these names and who they are exactly, but vice president, general counsel. David Surratt, do know that name. Vice President for Student Affairs and Dean of Students. You also got Bob Stoops in there, which Oklahoma fans should be pretty happy. Oklahoma football fans should be pretty happy about that. And then you've also got, so he's going to be the executive director, and then also special advisor to the athletics director. Amy Noah as the vice president and the chief advancement officer from the OU Foundation, designee from the outside of the university is what she is. And then you've also got Steve Gensler, Gene and Elena Ward's family chair, chair-in-law, let's see, president associate. Sorry, that's kind of small on my screen, so hard for me to read that from this far away. But anyways, you also got Cassie Krull, who's going to be who is the associate registrar. That's kind of your staff representative there. And you got Kinsey Hansen. Oklahoma softball fans know who she is. That's the student representative, and then former softball player, former softball star. And then you've got Sam Bradford, former star quarterback, obviously. That's just kind of one of your designees from outside the university, but still kind of within the university. You've also got Sherry Cole, former University of Oklahoma head women's basketball coach. And then you've got Dorothy Anderson, vice president, chief human resources officer, who's going to be the ex officio member. So anyways, all of those names on there for you to read through. I probably didn't need to read through all of those, but if anybody's listening on audio, they probably couldn't see that, obviously. Couldn't see that. So they want to probably hear all those names, even though some of those names will mean nothing to you. Anyways, these 12 names, it's just a bunch of people, again, kind of with diverse backgrounds, different opinions, different views on what they would want from an athletic director to kind of mash all that together. And of course, like I said, Joe Castiglione himself, he's going to advise the group and he'll be there, but he's not going to be a voting member. So he still would be part of this process of maybe helping find resources. The process, it's kind of involved kind of reviewing resumes, looking at nominations for potential candidates, which nominations could come from anywhere. It could be people throwing their name in the hat. It could be Joe Castiglione himself throwing a name towards them. It could be maybe just, finding somebody and an outside group were to send a name and say, hey, you should probably look at this. It could be any kind of potential candidates, and kind of looking at the nominations. They're going to conduct interviews, narrow down the options. Ultimately, they're going to try to aim to find somebody who can lead Oklahoma in that AD role and leading the athletics program. And especially when you think of navigating new big changes like transitioning to the SEC, by the time that they take over, it'll probably already basically be transitioned. So then to be able to uphold that transition and still be as tough as the rest of the conference and to fit in with the rest of the conference. But then you think of things like NIL and transfer portal and everything that goes into that. There's so much. and the school even knows even more than we do about things like the House versus NCAA settlement and even others that may not even be known to the public. So they're going to consider all of this, and they want to have somebody that's going to be able to really be able to adapt to all of these changes and put their school in the best interest. And really everybody that's on this list has huge interest in Oklahoma doing well, whether they're a former athlete, former coach, or currently working with the school. They want the school to be the best. So once someone is selected, the new athletic director will kind of take over and kind of transition Joe Castiglione out. And again, I don't know what this looks like. If Joe Castiglione, let's say that they hire somebody by this time next year and he's ready to go in 2026, if Joe Castiglione would stick around and help and kind of train him and then transition himself out, or if he would just say, all right, I'm going to hand it over to you. I'll show you the ropes real quick, and it's going to be a 6-month period, and I'm out the door by mid 2026, maybe late 2026, early 2027. I don't know. I think that's something that we'll kind of know more as we get closer to time, but that's definitely something that I won't have the answers for you on that. How are all these people going to work together? What are they going to do? It's pretty much this entire committee is going to be operating as a team. It's going to be under obviously Stevenson's leadership, kind of holding different meetings, discussing the candidates, making decisions on who it is. They're going to collaborate, kind of sharing their expertise. For example, former athletes like and coaches like Coach Stoops. You got Sam Bradford, even Coach Cole. You got Kinsey Hansen. All of them might focus specifically on the sports needs and what they think they'll need in the realm of sports and in the athletic department itself. After all, it's the athletic director. Then you got other university admins who are going to be focusing more maybe on the legal side of things, the financial side of things. They're also going to be looking at the student related aspects of things. So that's why you get such a diverse group. You've got, the faculty and staff that's going to kind of rep and kind of ensure the academic, the operational balance and everything. They're going to review all of the applications together. And I'm sure everybody is probably going to have their hands on all of these applications and know who it is. So I'm sure plenty of Oklahoma fans and people around the program are going to be asking Kinsey Hansen, hey, who was that? Who's up in the running? Anytime the Bob Stoops is in front of the media. So any names pop out to you on that list that you guys are going through? I'm sure that's going to happen with just about any of these members on the committee. But anyways, I'm sure they're all going to kind of go through that. They might conduct joint interviews. They might just do it with a specific group of people doing the interviews, but they all get to chip in and maybe throw in what kinds of questions are asked. That's kind of up for them to decide, obviously, and I won't know that, but it's going to form something like that. Then again, going back to Joe C and what he's going to do in that advisory role, he's probably going to put some input in and provide some sort of continuity between them all, and maybe give some kind of guidance to OU's transition, or even give them challenges. Challenges to look at. Hey, this is the hardest things that I've had to do. These are the things ahead that I'm not looking forward to having to try to go through. And he's going to be able to kind of give guidance based on that and try to help them in some ways there. And ultimately, the committee, they're going to have to go through and they're going to recommend the finalists to the OU presidents or even the board for the final hiring. I don't know exactly who will be on maybe they all take their vote on who they think should be the hire, and then it's up for the decision of the university to make that decision. But ultimately, they're probably going to try to narrow everything down, get them down to the final 3, and hand it off. But they're going to look for the best fit. And I do like the fact that they go with such a diverse group, so many different people in this group that have different interests, different areas of expertise. I think that's pretty important. And I was seeing a lot of kind of questions about this committee being selected and kind of comments, concerns. Like, is this normal? Do you normally put a recently graduated softball catcher or a former women's basketball coach, former Heisman Trophy quarterback, former football coach? Do you really put people like this on that committee? And yeah, I mean, I looked into it, and I've seen several schools do something similar to this, for kind of a search committee, if you will. Not necessarily, it's not really the hiring committee. It's not the committee that's going to make the final decision. It's the ones that are going to try to search and give their input. And some of them, you think of Kinsey Hansen, for example. She might not actually be in all of the meetings or really have a whole lot of input, but they're going to take her input and use that for what she's worth and bounce ideas off of her. Hey, you were the most recent of any of us to be an athlete of the school. What are you looking for? And specifically even for softball, or how do you think that could apply to other school or to other sports? So there's a lot that goes into that. And so it is normal to try to have student representation with Kinsey and Sam, so kind of have that a little bit in there. And then of course have a diverse group, and usually it goes anywhere from like 9 to 15 different people that you all kind of bunch into this search committee. That way it kind of gives some fairness to the search and also thoroughness to the search too. I think that's really important. A lot of schools even use an external source, an external firm that might help them go through this hiring process, narrowing it down and trying to find a candidate, even interviewing a candidate. So this is pretty normal from what I've seen in the past. And so that this is something that I like this structure, and I think this structure, it's going to kind of avoid any kind of bias in who Oklahoma ends up hiring in at AD. I think it should eliminate some of that. So a lot of fun seeing this, and I'm very excited for this search committee and the names that are going to be coming up here in the next few months. It's going to be a lot of fun. But let's get into fall football. I don't have really any updates more than what we got from maybe SEC media days, but I did want to kind of dive into, taking a look at Ben Arbuckle, because again, I think Oklahoma fans are the most concerned about what this offense is going to look like. Because if this offense, just the comment that I read just a moment ago, this offense has such potential, and if it can live up to its potential, and the defense is just as good as they were last year, even just close to what they were last season, what is the ceiling for this team? I really don't know where you cap Oklahoma if this offense is just good. I'm not talking about a great offense. I'm not talking about an offense that's putting up Baker Mayfield offense type numbers, having to score every single drive like he did against Texas Tech. That's not the kind of numbers that I'm talking about. I'm talking about an offense that can go out there and give you a solid performance week in, week out. Don't turn the ball over when the ball's turned over to you. Play complementary football. That's all we're looking for. That's all Oklahoma wanted the entirety of last season, right? So what could this entire team look like if that's what they got on offense? And I think a lot of Oklahoma fans are excited because of the potential and what's there. So it's a huge offensive reset. And we talk about the hire with the 29-year-old Ben Arbuckle, and I think his age is very important because you see the relationships that he's able to build with the players. And I think you even look at guys like Miguel Chavis and what he's the relationships that he's able to have with the players. He's a younger guy. I even think Todd Bates is young enough to where he has a really good relationship. Obviously, all these coaches have good relationships with them, but when you're younger and you're closer to their age, you're able to kind of relate to them a little bit more. Ben Arbuckle, he just clicks. He fits in with the guys so well. And he's been able to work in those relationships in a way that's harder to do the older that you get. And I think anybody that's got any kind of common sense about how relationships work, I've been a young guy that's been in a workforce that, blue collar workforce that has a bunch of guys that are older than me and probably old enough to be my dad. And I've gotten along well with them, but it's obviously easier to get along with people your own age, right? So, that's just huge. And I think that's important for Oklahoma in this offense. But anyways, they bring in this young 29-year-old offensive coordinator, Ben Arbuckle, as an offensive coordinator. And he's got to try to overcome that terrible 2024 performance, where they had to fire Seth Luttrell after 8 games. You had your starting quarterback benched in the first SEC game that you play as a new conference school. First SEC game, right? It was that Tennessee game. Yeah, I know it was Tennessee, but I'm making sure that was the first SEC game. But anyways, you have your starting quarterback benched, and then probably benched for too long, and where it becomes a disaster, and you have to put him back in when he's already now at this point he's fighting. Man, do I save my eligibility? Do I save my extra year of eligibility, or do I go in? And I'm facing a really tough decision here, and I guess, hey, I've got to go in. I've got to prove myself. And so he goes in, and and then you've got a weird up down to the back end of your schedule too, where you beat Alabama, you lose to Missouri, you lose to LSU. I mean, what's going on here with this team? And it's such an up and down year, specifically on offense. All the turnovers, and Ben Arbuckle has to come in here and change everything. Now he does contrast very sharply with Seth Luttrell, and he does aim to restore prominence to this offense. He doesn't just want a good offense; he wants that top ranked offense. Obviously, trying to balance that with the defense is most important. But he brings so much. He does have a really unique journey too. When you take a look at his life, so go back just 7 years ago. This guy who I don't know his contract, and I'm sure you can probably find rough numbers of what his contract is online, but I know for a fact he's making well over six figures, right? Just 7 years ago, this guy was working as an Uber Eats driver to try to make ends meet for his family, as he was trying to get into the profession that he's now in. And he's now in at really the highest level you can possibly get in, at least at the offensive coordinator position. It doesn't get much higher than Oklahoma, and it's one of the blue bloods. That's what I mean by that. And obviously, you can probably go to a team that's probably more successful right now. I get that, but to go from Western Kentucky, we're really kind of an intern almost at a small FCS team, working your way. Sorry, not FCS even, but then working your way to, I think, Western Kentucky after that, and then taking over as offensive coordinator at Washington State. Huge upside there. And then taking over and going over and becoming an offensive coordinator at Oklahoma. That's a huge jump. I don't care who you are. That's a huge jump. And so for Ben Arbuckle, just 7 years ago, driving Uber Eats to make ends meet, he now gets to call plays for the Oklahoma Sooners, a blue blood program, at the highest level too, in the SEC. He brings a lot of fun, a lot of energy. Players really kind of talk about this a lot. I think Robert Spears Jennings, I think, was talking quite a bit about this. R. Mason Thomas might have talked a little bit about it as well at SEC Media Days, kind of talking about his swag and how he's competitive. He trash talks them, and trash talks the defense, where I think it was Robert Spears Jennings who was talking about how when they make a big play on defense, they go over and make sure to trash talk back to Coach Arbuckle. And when they make a big one on offense, he runs over and trash talks to them. Makes it a very fun, very competitive environment, an enjoyable atmosphere. That's something you've got to love. That's something that you didn't see last season. Last season, you heard some good reports out of spring and summer, going into fall and the beginning of fall, but you didn't hear the fun that they're having there, and that's extremely important. Now, do you want just fun? No, you want a balance. You want obviously like a very good balance where you're not having too much fun, where you're not paying close enough attention to what's going on in the game, and with your game, but you do need some sort of balance there, but you have to have fun. You have to bring fun and build relationships. And that's one thing that I think Arbuckle has focused so well on since coming to Oklahoma. Focusing on individual connections with players, building trust between players, between players and between him and players, getting to know the players. And I think John Mateer spoke to this a lot in the media days, where he felt like it was easier for him. And I would assume Ben Arbuckle feels the same, that they can help each other help each other teach this offense to this entire crew, because then it takes a little bit off of each of them to be able to build relationships. And that's one thing that Ben Arbuckle has been huge on, John Mateer has been huge on, and both of them coming in together is unprecedented. Because usually when you get a first-year starter, I'm talking first year at that school, this is going to be his first year at Oklahoma. When you get that, if he were, let's say that Oklahoma would have gotten, let's say Mendoza from Cal. Mendoza would have come over and he was the starting quarterback this season, is what we're expecting, and he came over. He would have had to learn that entire system that Ben Arbuckle brings, and he would have had to try to get to know the players, where John Mateer comes over to a system he already knows. He gets to teach that to the players, and him teaching it to the players is also building relationships there. I mean, it just makes everything so much smoother, such a smooth transition to a new conference for them, to a new team for them, to a new atmosphere, everything around them. Obviously, also Coach K coming over with them as well. The quarterback's coach coming with them as well, which is huge because, again, another guy to help instill this offense. And of course, Kevin Wilson being added to the staff helps because he's able to learn on his own and then try to be that extra guy to go out there and teach that offense as an analytical guy. So, it's a different vibe around this program, and a lot of that because of Ben Arbuckle. Again, I think John Mateer is also a part of that, but Ben Arbuckle obviously being that big thing, and with Ben Arbuckle, he's tried to build that relationship with every player, not just Mateer. I've seen several times where they're posting on social media where he's gone out to dinner with them. Him and Deion Burks, when Deion Burks mentioned that he was sticking around, he went out and made sure to have dinner with Deion Burks. Celebrate that. There was so much, and he was a big part of keeping Deion around. So, there's a lot that goes into this, and with Ben Arbuckle coming over, and you think of his kind of innovative scheme that he brings into Norman with the scheme that he runs. It's an offense that kind of evolves around a lot of new style plays, kind of the new progressions that the SEC is not really familiar with. There's a lot of things that he runs in his playbook that are just much different than what the SEC is used to seeing. And so I'm very interested, and I think the personnel around seems to fit really well. You go back and look at the tight ends. The tight ends didn't do too much. Excuse me as I take a quick swig. Throat kind of drying out. It's a little dry down here in this basement. Anyways, getting into this scheme and what he's building around, I think that there's so much with John Mateer, or sorry, with Ben Arbuckle that he brings to the SEC that is extremely valuable. So I look at this. I think he's preparing for a lot of challenges in the SEC, and even Mateer. Challenges are going to come up, and it's going to be much more challenging than what both of them are used to. But there's also that same aspect of the SEC having to adapt to their game. So, upcoming the test, obviously the season starts with Illinois State, but the first major challenge going against the primetime nighttime game, home game against Michigan, September 6th. This duo they have to prove themselves in that game to make Oklahoma fans feel good about them, feel good about this upcoming season. That's really big. And then, of course, after that, you jump into the Texas game. And I think that's the biggest game, because if you can win against Michigan, that says something about this team. But if you win Michigan and then turn around and go down and win in Dallas too, I think that's huge. I do see we have a donation. As always, guys, donations will always be read on the show. Huge thanks to Sooner Bob. He gave us a $4.99 donation. Healthy competition breeds champions. Yeah, healthy. I mean, again, Mr. Miyagi stuff right there, Bob. But yeah, it's you take a look at last season and what Oklahoma had. It's a season full of injuries, and right there, healthy competition. I mean, I think you being healthy is one, but the healthy competition part, man, that's even bigger. I mean, sharpen irons, sharpen irons, sharp. Oh man, iron sharpens iron. If I can get my words to come out right tonight, it gets down to towards the end of the episodes, and man, that tongue starts to dry up, start to get closer to just forgetting what you're trying to say. Anyways, yeah, iron sharpens iron. That's another good way to say what you got there. Healthy competition breeds champions. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that goes along well with what we were talking about with the SEC, man. I think that's why the SEC is so strong, and why the SEC is the deepest conference in college football. I don't care what anyone says. I mean, I don't think you can change my mind on that. Again, just bringing up the 4 bottom feeders of each conference. Again, everybody, so donations always welcome. Again, huge thank you to Sooner Bob for the donation to the show. That just goes towards building this channel, building this brand. And then also, you guys, please check out the link down below to join the membership here on YouTube. We're going to try to get more exclusive content for our members. Once we start to build up a membership, a membership catalog, I guess you could say, once we start to build up some members, we want to get some exclusive stuff in there, and so, I want you guys to know about that. And then, of course, the donations always read on the show as well. So that's another way to help us big time. So I appreciate it. I see Sooner Cowboys. Sharpen iron, sharpen even more. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, man, like I said, it's late in the night, had a long day. It's been a long week. I know it's only Tuesday, but man, it's been a long week. I had to deal with a lot, but No, I appreciate the fun, guys. You know what I'm trying to say. You know what I'm trying to say. Anyways, Bishop, big salute to you, man. He says big salute to the Sooners family. It also reminds us only 39 days left. Is that right? 39 days, really? We're already down to 39 days, huh? Let me pull this up. Oklahoma Sooners football schedule. Oh, I pulled up the wrong thing, and I got my keyboard all the way up there. I'm gonna take your word for it, man. That's crazy. 39 days, huh? I'm excited. I know you guys are too. That's why you guys tune into the show, right? Yeah, as we get closer to, we're gonna have a lot more with recruiting news. We're gonna make sure to try to drop more on this channel. There's a lot more news that's gonna start coming out through fall football. You're gonna get some big time recruiting news and stuff like that. So I'll try to be on top of it for that kind of stuff. Make sure to tune in on this channel every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. Monday, Tuesday, Thursday. We have live shows Mondays. Also, I do want to take a quick moment for those of you who have been following this channel for some time. I meant to do this earlier, and I don't want to mention too much because it's not my business. But prayers out for Chad and Tierney Smith, their family, going through some hard stuff right now. If you follow Chad on social media, you know what's going on with him. And so I just want to say to them, Chad, and to your entire family, prayers out for them. Some really tough stuff that their families having to go through. So I did want to bring light to that to everybody on this channel, because I know you guys probably watched their show as well. And so I'm not sure when they'll return, but I want them to know that they can take their time. They don't need to come back anytime soon. We'll try to hold down the fort. And so huge prayers out to them. So if you guys could, if you're man or woman of faith, just throw up a prayer for their family, for healing on their hearts. They're going through some really tough stuff. But anyways, going on, for this channel, we are trying to build up a lot. So again, tune in every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday. So we've got Monday with Chad and Tierney Smith whenever they're able to return. So we'll have that on Mondays. Tuesdays here live with me, Oklahoma Sooners Live, and then call in show on Thursdays. Guys, I want to hear from you guys. I love reading the chat. I love it. All right. Yeah, the chat's a lot of fun, but it's a lot more fun if you guys call in. So we've got a phone number and everything. You guys call in the phone number and chat with us real quick here on the show on Thursdays. So that's Thursdays at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. So make sure to tune in, and we'll keep on trying to get more guests on too. I'm bad about scheduling the guests, and so that's the big thing for me. But once we get guests on and stuff like that, we'll keep that rolling. Try to get some special guests that you guys will enjoy. Once we get into the season, we're going to have all kinds of guests. I'm going to try to get people from other teams all over the place. I've got a lot of contacts with people from all different kinds of teams, and we're going to do, live events, all kinds of stuff. Again, that's where your donations and joining the membership program comes into effect. It helps us be able to travel. That takes time, resources, money, so there's all kinds of stuff that goes into that. So your memberships, donations, like what Sooner Bob gave for us tonight, all of that helps tremendously. We've got a lot of great things in store for this upcoming season too. Make sure to follow us on social media. Again, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. 2 free ways to follow and to help support the channel. Share it with a friend. Again, appreciate everybody for tuning in. Again, make sure to tune in again on Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday. This Thursday, call-in show. Don't miss it. 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. But that's all I got for you guys tonight. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. We'll catch you next time. Boomer.